This episode of Soldier Tech Battlefield, I'm going to pit the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 versus the new iPad, or the iPad 3, like some people call it. And we're going to see which tablet can reign supreme. So we're going to get started with the show. Welcome back to another episode of Soldiers Tech Battlefield, where we take two products and pit them against each other every single week. I'm your host, Mark Watson, otherwise known as Soldier Knows Best. And this week we have the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 tablet versus the new iPad. We're going to pit them against each other in 4 different categories. We're going to start off with design, then we're going to go to hardware, take a look at the cameras, and then take a look at the operating system, the OSs that are running on both of these tablets. So first, let's going to get started to the battle with the design. Well, let me first start off and say that both of these tablets have nice looking designs, but the companies went in 2 totally different directions when it comes to the material that they use to make them. Apple went with aluminum, which they use with a lot of their different products, has a very nice feel to it, it's pretty solid, and Samsung elected to go with plastic, which could add to the overall lightweight feel of this tablet. Plus, too, if you ever held the Samsung Galaxy S3, it's that same type of plastic, and I actually don't mind it at all. But if you put the two side by side, I think Apple was still winning the sexy category. And I maybe should add a sexy category here on Soldier Tech. Well, maybe if I compare ladies, I may do that. Anyway, that's another topic for another show. And when you look at form factor, even though the Galaxy Note is a taller and wider tablet, it's actually thinner and weighs less than the iPad. The iPad weighs 1.44 pounds. It comes in at 0.37 inches thick, where the Galaxy Note weighs 1.31 pounds. It comes in at 0.35 inches thick. And one of the things is that both of these tablets want you to use them in different orientations by default. You can tell by the location of the buttons and also to the cameras on the Galaxy Note that they want you to use it in landscape mode, but Apple elected to put the cameras in all the different ports in a more portrait type of layout. And I think that's probably the most common way that people want to hold their tablets. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to have to go with the iPad in this design category because it still is a sexier out of the two. It feels better in your hand. I think the orientation and the layout of all the different buttons is going to be better for general tablet use. So the iPad wins the design category. All right, now we're going to talk about the hardware. We're going to start on the insides of both of these tablets. And the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 has a 1.4 gigahertz quad-core processor alongside 2 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPad has a dual-core A5X processor alongside 1 gigabyte of RAM. I did a Geekbench test between both of these tablets, and the Samsung Galaxy Note really smashed the iPad on this benchmark test. And now let's take a look at storage configurations. The iPad has 16, 32, 64 gigabyte models that you can buy, where the Galaxy Note 10.1 only comes in a 16 or a 32 gigabyte configuration. But it does have a micro SD card slot, which you can expand your memory using that slot, which is always an added plus. One thing that the iPad has that is missing from the Galaxy Note, that is 3G or LTE connectivity. And the iPad has that with AT&T and Verizon, which is very important for a mobile device. Now, making our way to the outside of these devices, it is clear that the iPad has a better display. The Samsung Galaxy Note sports a 10.1 inch display, but only has a resolution of 1280 by 800, where the iPad has a 9.7 inch Retina display with a resolution of 2048 by 1536. Now, one thing I do like that Samsung did with the Galaxy Note is that it put 2 speakers on the front instead of just 1 speaker on the bottom right hand corner with the iPad. So the speakers should be a lot louder and a lot clearer. And they also added an infrared port at the top so you can use this tablet to control things like a TV. And with all the hardware between the two devices, the iPad still gets the longer battery life. It does have about 10 hours of normal use, where the Samsung Galaxy Note is going to get around 8 hours of use, and just the standby time is way longer with the iPad. And also the Galaxy Note comes with a note-taking device with the S Pen that slides right out of the tablet itself. You can use this to take notes on the screen and do different things like that. And I'll show more of this in the OS section of this battle. And so judging this category is pretty tough because both of these tablets have something that the other one doesn't have. The Galaxy Note does have that quad-core processor, which did outperform the iPad in my benchmark test. I love the expandable storage you can do with the micro SD card slot, and it does have the S Pen, which is going to be useful in certain situations as well. Then you look at the iPad, it has the Retina display, which is almost twice as better as a display on the Galaxy Note. And then you throw in the 3G and LTE options that you can get from AT&T and Verizon. And because this is a tablet, you want to be mobile and on the go, and those options will really give you all that freedom. I'm going to have to give this category a dead tie because both of these bring something to the plate that the other one doesn't. So the hardware category is a tie. And now let's going to talk cameras. Both of these devices have a 5 megapixel rear facing camera, but the big difference is that the iPad can record in 1080p at 30 frames per second, where the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 can only record in 720p at 30 frames per second. As you can see from some of these still images and movies that I was able to take with this, that the iPad clearly has the better rear facing camera. Things look a lot clearer. The image stabilization is also better with that in video mode. And overall, the pictures have a more accurate type of look to them than what the Samsung Galaxy Note is producing. But when we move to the the front of the tablets, the Galaxy Note has a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera, and the iPad still sports a VGA FaceTime camera. So the Galaxy Note has a slightly better front-facing camera for Skype calls or video calls and things like that. But all in all, with the performance of the rear-facing camera of the iPad and the front-facing camera not being too far behind, plus just the location of the cameras on the iPad is a lot easier to take photos and videos with it, I'm gonna have to give this camera category to the iPad. And now on to probably what's going to be the most controversial category down in the comments below. And this is the operating system, the OS. The Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 runs Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich, and the iPad runs iOS 6. Now, both of these operating systems take two totally different directions, where iOS 6 on the iPad is more media consumption focused, and Android 4.0 on the Samsung Galaxy Note is more productivity focused. Now, Samsung did a really good job by adding some multitasking features to the Android OS, and one of those is multi-screen, which allows you to have on one side of the tablet be running an internet browser, and on the other side you can be watching a video or taking notes and things like that. So I think that is pretty fun and pretty useful, especially on a tablet that has a screen this big. And then they throw in a ton of different applications that can take advantage of the S Pen. They add S Note, which is probably going to be the most common one that's going to be used, where you can jot down notes with the pen. You can have it where you write something, it'll automatically convert that into just regular text on the computer screen, or you can just have it just take your straight up written notes with the pen. Now I have to say this pen works very well. It is pressure sensitive, so the harder you press on the screen, the thicker the line will become. And also too, you can hold down the button on the pen and tap on the screen itself, and it'll take a screenshot, which is going to be good. And then Samsung also threw in Photoshop Touch, which allows you to get into your artistic mode if you want to be editing photos or different things like that by using the pen. You can still use your finger, but by using the pen, they threw in that application for absolutely free. Then we move over to iOS 6 on the iPad, which, as I said before, is a little bit more media-centric. It's really made for consuming as much media as possible, whether that be a movie or music or an application or a game that's designed for the iPad screen, taking advantage of that Retina display in the App Store. And so I really do enjoy both the OSs on these tablets. They bring something totally different to the plate. Now, on the Galaxy Note 2, I did feel that things were a little sluggish. I don't think the quad-core processor, I really didn't feel all that speed and power in the OS, and that may be because the OS was kind of weighing it down, and maybe too much stuff going on in the OS, but I do like the fact that they made a good amount of applications that were kind of specific for that S Pen. Where again, on the iPad, you have iOS 6. It's pretty trustworthy, pretty solid, pretty stable. It still is missing a little bit more of that customization feature that you can get from Android, but it's a very solid overall operating system, especially for applications, since they have the best applications on the market for that particular OS. Now, this Samsung Galaxy Note 2 was running Android 4.1 Jelly Bean at the time of this battle. This may be a different story, but right now I'm gonna have to give the OS category another tie for both of these tablets. All right, so that wraps up this battle between the iPad and the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1. Now, I do believe that both of these are still pretty solid tablets in their own right, and one may be better for you than the other, so I think you still want to probably get your hands on one of them to see which one is going to be a better fit for you. But the iPad does take this battle this time. But before I do end this episode, I want to announce the winner of the iPhone 5 giveaway that I started in last week's episode, and that winner is Non-Legit Wrestling. He left a nice little comment there, nice little paragraph. So Non-Legit Wrestling, you are the winner of the brand new iPhone 5. We will be contacting you here on YouTube, and we'll get that out to you. But again, thanks for watching this episode, guys. Please stay tuned for next week for another episode of Soldier Tech Battlefield, and I will see you later. Peace.